Well, one of the issues that has come up obviously is the allegations of over deployment of security. But I want to ask you, when you talk about this particular issue, if, for example, there were things like sting operations, people getting into these areas where this is taking place, and you're able to actually see on a kind of a candid camera who's getting involved, and then these people are prosecuted. Can that type of activity not potentially stem this problem? But then again, the question will come back to political will. Is the political will there if the ruling party and the opposition are both benefiting from this process?
I think there are a number of steps that need to be in place. I mean, clearly the political will needs to change. If the political will is about buying votes and spending money in that way, it's legitimate to spend money on an election campaign, on posters, on media, etc. That's absolutely fine. But it's not legitimate to actually go out and buy votes. So there should be ways in which that should be done. It's not for me to say there should be sting operations or it should be done in this way or that way. It's for the security agents to work out, in the circumstances in which they find themselves, how to do that. Clearly, as people know, there were security agents who were standing back. They may have said that actually their main responsibility was to ensure that there was no violence, as opposed to ensuring that there was no vote buying. So, what are the instructions that have gone out to the agencies? Did they intervene? I did hear, I didn't see it myself, I did hear of a couple of cases of security agencies intervening to say this is wrong. I didn't hear about arrests made of people who were actually handing out the money. So it's one thing to say you can't do that here, or you can't do that full stop. It's another to say I'm arresting you because you've just broken a Nigerian law. And so, yes, taking action in those areas is going to be important. Clearly, you don't want to inflame tensions. But this is a process, and I agree with what our fellow guest is saying about the improvement, after time. The electronic voting system is, generally speaking, working. That has meant that vote rigging has become much more difficult. You could argue that's the reason why voter inducement is on the increase, if indeed it is. But those kind of improvements on electronic voting, on the card reader, on e-collation, all of that is definitely a trend in the right direction, and definitely a trend which is strengthening democracy in Nigeria, and that's what we're here to do. The British government has spent, or is spending, around $60 million over 6 years in support of the democratic process in Nigeria, working with INEC and other groups, working with USAID as well, who are also contributing. So we're there to support the process and to ensure that that process works effectively.
What do you think can be done in terms of the particular issue of how the political parties across the board, not just the major ones, raise their funds, the oversight process? What kind of experience and what kind of technical support do you think could be offered to ensure that that's more effectively done in Nigeria?
Well, you brought out the question of how, political parties. The ballot papers were very long. There were, I think, 38, 39 parties at the Ekiti election. And in the count, when they held up the ballot and showed the ballot, which is a very good and transparent way of demonstrating to the people that this is working well, there were not many people voting for parties other than the APC and the PDP. So there's a question there around, political parties who nobody votes for. There are questions around, how is that working, how are they registered, and so on. Again, it's not for me to provide a solution. I'm going to meet the chair of INEC in the next couple of days, just to give him my impressions. I've already spoken to him on the phone, but to give him my impressions around that. And these are some of the questions I'll be asking. The cost of the 2019 elections, which is in the headlines today, that is very high. That is really, really high. So why is it costing that much? Is that really necessary? Are there ways in which this could be done more efficiently? Those are the kind of questions that need to be asked.
Because I was about to ask you also, you say you're spending $60 million US dollars over the next 6 years.
With our colleagues in the USAID, US Development.
What areas specifically are you intervening in?
So voter education, really important. We talked about that earlier. Focusing in particular on women, on youth, and on people with disabilities. So those three categories of people who don't always get the right education, the right information. So how do we get that information across? Helping with some of the technical assistance to INEC, so improving the voter system, the electronic voting system. Working with civil society organizations, So, for example, the quick count at Ekiti, which was run by Yiaga, the not too young to run people, was funded by DFID, by the British government, and by the US government as well. So the Situation Room, that's funded by the British government. So empowering civil society organisations that are actually part of the electoral process is another really important element of it. So there are different areas where we have intervened, and we will continue to support the process through 2019 and indeed, of course, beyond that.
Let me come to you, Mr. Arigbabu. What are you hoping to see for Osun? I mean, in what areas are you hoping that we will be able to make improvements? Yes, you have commended INEC. You want more transparency in the process of collation. You want civil societies to be able to see also how INEC is transmitting the data that they are collating. But what more do you want to see, especially as we approach the Osun elections?
Okay, thank you. For INEC, one needs to make a couple of recommendations. I was at the Ekiti. Our team was there when the PDP candidate, Professor Olushola, was unable to vote until the INEC national officer, commissioner, actually intervened. We think that, and you know, the tension was already building up. These are things that can, you know, escalate tension and lead to violence. So our suggestion
primarily was with his card.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Our suggestion really would be that perhaps a week before election, some of these key people, that if anything goes wrong, we saw close to that in 2015 when the president Jonathan couldn't. This could spark off and, you know, derail INEC processes. So perhaps they need to, you know, double check before the D-Day. And beyond that, it's not just about these important people, so to speak. It's also about the voters. The process is a bit slow. So imagine if we had like 70% voter turnout and wanted to end the process at 2 p.m. The rate at which the card reader was going and it took one person to vote would not have been able to, you know, capture everybody. So perhaps INEC might need to deploy more card readers and, of course, upgrade whatever it is that they have so that the process can be faster. So we'd like to see some of this, you know, happen in Osun. But more importantly, it's about voter education. Is about deploying technology more so that we can have evidence of things that happen on the D-Day. So that if we need to hold people to account, we'll have solid evidence to use. You cannot ask a police officer who was at the polling booth, even if you subpoena and the person comes, they are at liberty to say what their superior officers ask them to say. But if you deploy technology that captured real-time evidence, then you can deploy that and, you know, get people to, you know, account for the things that they have done. So we'd like to see more of this. We would like to engage the electorate more. The reason why you are being induced is because the politicians are realizing that the power is truly coming to your hands. What value do you place on such power?